He's Ryan Switzer, Swift Current. He is part of the Broncos. So first of all, Switzer and I used to work together with Barney a million years ago, and Everett Hindley. And what is Everett's role in the provincial government? Is he the health minister now?
Education, Minister of Education. That's our guy.
Okay. So, Ryan, 30 years ago, could you imagine that any one of us would ever have a real and important job like a minister in a government anywhere? Cool bet had 0 odds on that ever happening.
Having said that, though, if you told me that one of us was going to be a government minister at some point, I would have put my money on Everett. You know, he's knowledgeable, his act is together, and very well spoken dude, and you know, he's the right guy for the part. So the first part of your question, I'd answer no. But if you told me that one of us was going to end up, you know, in a high ranking political position, I would have put my money on Everett.
Dave, can you imagine the scene? There's me, there's Switzer, there's Everett, and there's Barney, all roaming the same radio station, shirking responsibility, following none of the rules. I don't know how we got anything done back then. And we weren't the worst of the bunch either.
The Eagle, though, I mean, that was a Swift Current radio dynasty. You know, you think back on the day, like the stuff that we used to do, and yeah, you know, we were a bunch of degenerates while we did it, but you know what? That was good times. And the Eagles no more in Swift Current. They flipped the country, whatever. You got to chase those ag dollars. But yeah, it was good times back then. Swift Current radio dynasty.
You know, as I look at this now, and again, to steal Barney's terminology, if I was going to sprinkle, let's say, so Everett's the guy that we think would have ended up in government. Would we all have sprinkled on that Barney being the most likely to end up in jail, or no?
Yeah.
No comment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't want to throw Shink under the bus, but yeah.
Oh, the checkered past. Hey, Ryan. So besides the Regina Pats taking Maddox Schultz #1 overall, the Swift Current Broncos decided to throw some dynamite into that Bantam draft the other day and just blew up players, picks, everything. What was going on with Swift? Is there like is it a retool, a rebuild? It was aggressive on Wednesday.
Yeah, and you know, I think was looking at Swift Current. They were looking at a situation heading into that prospect draft where they wanted to recoup some draft capital. A few seasons ago, they were part of that blockbuster deal that brought Connor Geekie to Swift Current. And, you know, with a player like Connor Geekie, who at the time was the best junior hockey player in Canada, you got to pay a big price to get a guy like that, to land a fish like that. So the Mr. Swift Current, thank you for that. But, you know, bringing Geekie to town, that's going to be a big price. And it cost the Swift Current Broncos a couple of first-round prospect picks, among other things. So now Swift is in a situation where they're looking to recoup that and build up some draft capital, because the organization has stated that they don't want to be a team that has to make a plethora of blockbuster trades. They want to build through the draft. They want to do things the right way. So they needed to recoup some draft capital, and they were able to take advantage of some good prices on 20-year-olds, and you know, they were able to get a couple of first-round picks back, which is huge.
Would you submit, or maybe I submit this to you, would you say that the price of doing business in order to win a championship in the Western Hockey League is that you've got to push all your chips into the table, and then the subsequent years you just hope that you can get some of those chips back? Is that where we're at right now?
That seems to be the way business is operating, Dave. Yeah, because, you know, you look at the final 4 teams in the Western Hockey League this year, and those are, you know, a lot of them made those big buys. You know, the Lethbridge Hurricanes and the Calgary Hitmen, you know, they made big buys at the deadline. Medicine Hat, we look at where they are right now. They go and they pay a pretty decent price to get Tanner Molendyk. So that seems to be the way things work, is when you hit the apex of your rebuild, you got to be prepared to part with a little bit of the future. But having said that, I think Saskatoon did a good job a couple of years ago. They went all in and made the big buys, and unfortunately they weren't able to get a championship, but they were able to flip a Tanner Molendyk, and they were able to recoup a lot of that draft capital, and as such, you know, the rebuild shouldn't be as painful as maybe it would have been prior to the Molendyk deal in Saskatoon. But to answer your question, that certainly seems to be the way that it goes, is the team that's willing to make the big buy, you got to do that if you want to be competitive in the playoffs.
Question, because somewhere along the way I totally missed out on this. In Swift, when the Broncos score a goal, do they turn off the lights in the arena now and like flash the lights on and off?
LED lights, man. Oh yeah, big budget addition to the aging innovation plex. But yeah, I think that was a few years ago they installed the LED. So oh yeah, it's all about the entertainment. It's all about putting on a big show these days, Maz. And Swift Current definitely staying with it.
Well, no, because remember in hockey rinks, sometimes the lights would go off, and because of the lighting that they have, it would take a long time for them to come back on. I'm like, how are they doing this? How are they just flicking the lights on and off here? As a fan, I'm watching highlights to be like, this is disaster waiting to happen. Okay, so there's a system to this. They're not messing with the actual. Okay, it's good to know. I have to say the production quality of Western Hockey League games in the past 10 years has gone to a complete different level, rivaling some of the pro stuff. So kudos to, I know, and as like you talk about, and this gets brought up all the time, Swift Current is the smallest hockey market in Canada, the smallest attendance. Like you can't put as many people as you can into the Saddle Dome. Is that a challenge for you guys as a Bronco organization to be like, all right, we know what we have as an asset. We know what we have potentially working against us. Let's just make this great for everyone that's involved.
Yeah, and I think Swift gets a lot of forgiveness. We have a lot of hockey fans within our market. You know, a high percentage of the 16,000 people in Swift Current are passionate and knowledgeable hockey fans who will come out and support the team through thick and thin. But having said that, Mass, you know, I know that major junior hockey teams and pro teams and sports teams of all makes and models have got to find reasons for those casual fans to get off the couch and come see what's happening there. You're competing with, you know, hundreds of different channels on TV. You're competing with Netflix for fan attention. So it behooves any attendance-driven sports market to really do the best they can with what they have and enhance that production. You know, Swift Current, like I say, we have a fairly comfortable cushion of passionate fans that are going to support the team through thick and thin. But yeah, like teams, you know, regardless of what league you're in, if you're charging admission, you got to make it worth it for people to get off their couch and drive all the way across town, often in -40 weather, to enjoy a show. You know, win or lose, hit the booze. You know, make it fun no matter what.
Nice.
Gentlemen, I'm sure that we actually all, if we go back in our history, could probably all point to the fact that we've been air checked by the same gentleman, if you will, over the years. And I can remember him telling me point blank, if you have to qualify a question, never ask it. But I'm going to ask it anyways. Ryan, in 2025, was a second or third round WHL draft pick more valuable than what it was in 2024? And I qualify the question because the NCAA rules have changed this season. So if you are a high WHL draft pick, there's probably a likelihood that you are going to be very close to getting on a roster right away, as opposed to having to make a decision whether you want to develop at Junior A or NCAA or where you want your development to take place. So has that increased the value of the higher round draft picks, or am I just simply reading too much into this?
You know, the NC2A situation it's an interesting one. And I know that there was a lot of excitement when they did change the rules here. And I apologize for what you may think is a non-answer, but I think a lot of the really, really smart plugged in hockey people are still trying to figure out this NCAA lay of the land. It's an ever-changing situation. And, you know, we'll be able to look back 3 or 4 years, I think, when the dust has settled on it and be able to better answer that question, Dave. But short answer right now, I mean, I think, you know, players have more options than they did before. You know, you look at the Swift Current situation, their team captain, Clark Caswell, who is heading into his 19-year-old season, has now committed to the University of Denver. You know, that's a bit of a hit. But on the flip side, you're getting kids who are able to have the best of both worlds, who are able to play a few years in the Western Hockey League, take advantage of that scholarship program, and then move on to one of those first-class NC2A schools, you know, hopefully after 4 full years in the Western Hockey League. But, you know, it's more options for the players right now, and there's certainly some of them are certainly taking advantage of that. But it's going to be interesting to see how this NC2A thing shakes out over the next few years. And I wish I had a more definitive answer for you, but all the people with the high hockey IQs who are part of the business, who are smarter than me, I asked them the same question. And right now, it's a situation where we're still trying to figure out the lay of the land on this thing.
Well, speaking of the NCAA, let's switch to this. Western Hockey League final gets going tonight. The Spokane Chiefs are in Medicine Hat to take on the Tigers. And the rich get richer because it was announced earlier today that Andrew Basha and Caden Lindstrom, who's already committed to go NCAA next year, will be suiting up for the Tigers tonight to play their very first games. you saw these teams up close throughout the regular season. To me, Medicine Hat is stacked. The Dub has not won a Memorial Cup in a long time. And nothing against Spokane, but if we're going to do it, I think it's these Medicine Hat Tigers. If there are weaknesses, Ryan, where is it with that Medicine Hat team?
It's you talk about the Medicine Hat Tigers, and I know a lot of people these days online are talking about 100 men versus one gorilla. Well, 100 men versus Gavin McKenna. That's how it is in junior hockey right now. And as you mentioned, McKenna's just been an absolute stud, a great supporting cast around him. And yeah, Lindstrom and Basha coming back, a fourth overall pick and a second round pick added to your lineup when you've already been steamrolling the competition. Medicine Hat, they're solid from the net out. Harrison Mennigan, he dealt with an unspeakable family situation heading into the playoffs, and he's managed to settle into a good routine. Med Hat has a solid blue line behind Tanner Molendijk, and of course that embarrassment of riches up front, where you add two more studs like Basha and Lindstrom. In terms of weaknesses for the Medicine Hat Tigers, I think the Spokane Chiefs are a team that may match up with them fairly well, in the sense that Medicine Hat is so committed to offense. They don't have 3 forwards and 2 defensemen. They often have 5 forwards out there. It's an offense first mentality. And the Spokane Chiefs are a team that can play pond hockey with them. They got one of the league's top scorers in Andrew Crystal. They got Berkeley Catton, good Sasky boy from Saskatoon. They have some studs that can go as well. They've been putting up points like crazy throughout these playoffs. Both teams are pretty fresh. They swept their conference final. So in terms of weaknesses for the Medicine Hat Tigers, they got a team that can run and gun with them. And they haven't seen that yet in the playoffs. So they're going to have to commit a little bit more to defense than they had. And if they don't, Medicine Hat or Spokane, they're a team that can quickly go the other way and put one in the back of the net. I like what you said about, Med Hat being the potential to end the Western Hockey League drought at the Memorial Cup. Let's take nothing away from the Spokane Chiefs. This is a high-octane team that can burn you and can put the puck in the net. Great 20-year-old and Shea Van Olm as well. They got good goaltending. This is going to be a phenomenal series, and kudos to the Western Hockey League for giving it for fans for free on that Victory Plus app as well, because this is going to be one of the best playoff series we've seen in a while.
So, Ryan, I'll put this to you. Congratulations. You've just been named the head coach of the Spokane Chiefs. Do you want to run and gun with Medicine Hat, or do you want to slow things down? How are you going to attack them?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how Basha and Lindstrom fit into the lineup. Are these guys that are going to be seeing a regular shift? Are they good enough to see a little bit of ice time here and there? You want to take some time to assess, but you know what? You're in a situation with Med Hat. Okay, I'm the coach of the Spokane Chiefs. Let's get out there. Let's have some fun. Let's play some pond hockey with these boys. Let's go.
Dave's lunch is arriving. If you're watching on the stream, Dave is a very important person in Saskatoon as voice of the Riders. Look at that door-to-door service right there.
That's Sean Coleman right there. I tell you, you know what? They don't get enough credit for the work that they do in the community here. They've been feeding me all week long. $14.99 for this tonight. Steak sandwich. It looks phenomenal. But again, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
Outstanding. It's going to be a smoking hot weekend in southern Saskatchewan. There's a nice steak sandwich. Rider training camp opens on Sunday. Are you excited, Ryan, that football season is back? Did everybody get a chance to talk? We take a break from talking politics. We can talk Riders. Another topic of conversation we could argue about depending on the company we're in.
No, you know what Saskatchewan sports fan isn't excited about Rider season? It's part of who we are. It's the fabric of our province. It's on a lot of people's license plates. I mean, and yeah, it's just part of what makes the Saskatchewan experience cool, the way everyone rallies around CFL. I'm certainly not the expert that you and Dave would be on the subject matter, but oh yeah, it's definitely a fun time of year.
Oh, so what? So you're a city councilor in Swift Current. What's that day to day like there? Because that's a real job. So is it shaking hands and kissing babies and taking email complaints, or what do you do to fill up a day in Ryan Switzer's life these days?
The email complaints are there. The shaking hands and the kissing babies, that's for other levels of government. The Everett Hindleys and the Warren Steinleys of the world have that down pat and everything. But no, it's just going out and talking to people. I think there's three different levels of government, and at the municipal level, you have one mouth and two ears, and you have to respect the ratio. You just go and you listen to people, and I'm lucky enough to be on my second term right now, so I've already got the lay of the land through the first one. So yeah, it's making yourself available and just having those conversations.
If I may, I now understand what a fish feels like, as the food is just over here. I feel like the bait has been set. Anyways, I do want to ask a little bit, though, about Rider Nation in Swift Current. I was fortunate enough to meet a group of fans that travel to and from every game from Swift Current. And again, they love the experience of coming in, of driving in. What's the feeling around Swift Current when it comes to the riders? I know that there's a lot of pricing options and attractions when it comes to the way that they've laid out the ticket prices for this year. What's the feeling, though, in Swift Current about the riders?
Swift Current fans will find a way or make one to get to Rider games. It's great that the Riders are doing that with ticket options and trying to make it more affordable. I've often said that the Southwest Saskatchewan, not just Swift Current, but surrounding area, I would say we have the most Rider fans per capita in this corner of the province. Taking nothing away from anyone else, but it's definitely a thing here. We're passionate about it, and I mentioned this earlier in regard to game production. Win or lose, hit the booze. It's a fun thing to do here. But you drive around Swift Current on a Saskatchewan Rough Rider game day, and the lineup at the Co-op gas station is big. Everyone's in Rider jerseys. They're gassing up and they're getting ready to head out and make the trip, or they're buying pops and snacks to watch the game at home. But Rider Pride is definitely alive and well in Swift Current. I know I've been a part of several different sports dinner fundraisers, and whenever there's anyone connected to the Riders that comes to town, that's always a huge draw and a super long autograph line. So yeah, the Rider Pride has always been very, very alive and well in the southwest corner of the province.
All right, we'll let you go. If you end up at a cattle branding this weekend, say hi to former Premier Brad Wall. He's a great follow on social media. Just seems like a real, never met him in person. Seems like a real good dude.
He's a great dude. I don't know where this transformation into Saskatchewan's John Dutton came from, but yeah, he's a great dude. And he's fighting the good fight and representing out in Cypress Hills. And I know he's a big media consumer, and we certainly wish him all the best. We miss him in Swift Current Central here within the city, but glad to see him doing good things out in the Cypress Hills there.
Saskatchewan's John Dutton. All right, it's Ryan Switzer on the Western Pizza Guest Hotline.